Hi everyone, it's Jug, and welcome to the video. So, today, I want to talk about something very specific. We're going to be looking into the second Storm comic book, written by Murewa Ayodele. Specifically, this scene he wrote with the character Doctor Daye, the one that's currently running the hospital that Storm is going to get treated for her radiation poisoning. The reason I want to bring up this scene is because it's actually bringing up quite a bit of controversy, and even having some people really question Murewa's abilities as a writer. Now, that's not me. This is the thing I want to say about it, though, very specifically. I love this scene. One of the reasons is I definitely wasn't somebody that actually enjoyed the Krakoan era. There were a lot of factors into it, but all in all, from start to end, most of the time, I was not enjoying the books. Now, I'm not saying this is an absolute shot at Krakoa. One of the biggest reasons I didn't enjoy Krakoa was actually because we didn't have enough scenes like this. It was stated very early, or at least it gave the feel that Krakoa was never meant to be a perfect paradise. But it was very rare that we actually had scenes like this where characters, specifically the X-Men, were called out for the things that could be failings of Krakoa for either the mutant citizens or for how their actions could actually be affecting humans. Because the fact is, now that not only were they a nation, but they also expanded an empire that actually was and even planned to expand more planets outside of Araco. So the whole idea was they were going to affect not even just humans, but every single sentient species that lived on Earth, as well as the Arakans. And it really bugged me that we didn't have scenes like how we got with Doctor Day. And I actually really appreciated the fact it was with Storm. I mean, it is a little bit unfair, and it was a bit much to have her sacrifice a family heirloom just so she can receive treatment. That part I did feel was a bit unfair. But I want to talk to you about why I feel like this was a very clever scene and it actually had a lot of thought into it. Now, for all I know, I could be overanalyzing, and Murewa just thought it was going to be cool, it would have been funny, and I don't know. I can't get into the guy's head as much as I want to. If I could, I'd learn all the secrets and probably spoil everything. I'm a horrible person that way. So yeah, probably a good thing I can't, especially because I'm podcasting this. Okay, so moving on. So a big problem I have with this is that I've seen people talking about it and saying it's lazy writing because like he's complaining about these aspects of Krakoa that was should have been easy access or should have been free or stuff like that. But that's actually not how it was supposed to work. And see, I feel like Murray. See, here's the thing: the drugs themselves, the life-saving drugs, was over the course of the 4 years of the Krakoan series. They were just completely thrown around and thrown in the air and miswritten over so much. But the original objective, the original thing about the life-saving drugs was this: you had one that could help cure mental degeneration, so Alzheimer's and dementia, that was supposed to be a thing in the past. You had one that was able to extend your life by 5 years. I mean, you could probably say that about any drug, we don't know. And a third one, it was a universal antibiotic. So that also would have helped. But here's the thing: when Hickman started writing in Powers of X and Powers of 10, it was clearly stated that these drugs aren't going to be for free. They are going to be for sale. You could get access to it by accepting Krakoan sovereignty, but you also had to pay. So Big Pharma had to shell out all the money. This was a huge development because this is like an indication they're not being superheroes. They're being businessmen. They're being leaders of nations. They had their thing that the rest of the world would want, and only they could provide it. They were aiding in capitalism and benefiting from it big time because it cost nothing for them to make and nothing to grow. They didn't have to pay for labor. They could get all the drugs they needed with an absolute 0% loss, and they could only gain from everything they were taking in from people that were buying them. So, as time went on with the Krakoan era, it was around the time of the second Hellfire Gala that they started stating that the drugs were for free. This came out of absolutely nowhere. It was stated by Duggan, it was stated by Fox, but it was never stated anywhere else that the drugs were free. So this was a massive misstep of the Krakoan story. It wasn't even a retcon. It was just a complete miswrite. It was never stated that the drugs weren't for sale. And it is complete contradiction of this scene. This was one of the most famous scenes in the Krakoan era, in the earliest days. Issue 4 of X-Men, where Magneto, Xavier, and Apocalypse, they are going to meeting all these world leaders that aren't joining, they're not signing up to Krakoan sovereignty, and they're going to try and negotiate and talk with them. And then we have this moment with Magneto. We're going to buy we're going to buy the libraries, we're going to buy the schools, we're going to buy the politicians, we're going to buy the world, and we're going to do it with the money you give us for the drugs. So with a statement this heavy, it was clear that the intention of the drugs were always meant to be paid for. It was meant to cost money. So this is why this dude, Dr. Daye, would actually be upset about it. His hospital isn't just a public hospital. It's not a public hospital. It's not a general hospital. It's not a private hospital. It's a secret hospital meant for people with meta abilities. This is a place that's kept secret from the world. So he doesn't have access to insurances. He doesn't have access. He probably doesn't even have access to government funding. All he has to keep his hospital going is donations from superheroes. So he has things from the Fantastic Four. He has things from the Avengers, and he never received anything from the X-Men, both pre-Krakoa and during Krakoa, despite the fact they had plenty to offer at the time. They could contribute, but they spent all their time and effort on their own thing, on their own processes. They completely took everything and looked at it for their own benefit rather than funding something that could actually benefit more people and the ones they don't actually look out for. Because despite it all, one of the X-Men's biggest problems is they never actually. This is going to sound a bit harsh, but they have had moments of being very selective with who they protect. And yet they do, and especially during the Krakoan era. Now, that is a bit harsh, and I am being a little bit harsh on that stage, but they have had isolationistic behaviors in the past. In fact, I saw in an interview that I believe Murewa stated something about how it was also meant to be a bit of a counter against the accusations that a lot of non X-Men heroes usually get from the X-Men of the whole where were the Avengers when? And so, which has created a lot of contention between so many fans as well as the actual characters. It's always been used by other writers to try and put the X-Men on a bit of a pedestal. Murewa clearly isn't going in that direction. He's also, because for starters, Storm is an Avenger, so we're also got to make sure that the people she's with at the moment are like kind of like they worthy of her, but also just get rid of this perception that the X-Men are better than all these other heroes, because it's just not true. Like, the heroes are the heroes to the people that view them as the heroes. So it's just very inappropriate to say one's better than the other just because, I don't know, maybe you're more of a fan. So he's actually being very mature in this, and Because now, if someone says, well, where were the X-Men went? Well, how many hospitals have you funded? So, and they've also always looked at themselves as the heroes and mutants. So the idea of this place existing is just, I can't imagine they would actually think about it. So this place would not be on their radar at all. So it wouldn't surprise me if like very few X-Men, and probably only the ones that would know about it, are ones that have been associated with other teams. Which is actually very unfortunate, because if they actually did donate and had more time to spend at a hospital like this, like if they had more access and knowledge about it, it could actually easily benefit them. So that's probably one of the reasons why Storm is so shocked. Like, she's judging him because she thinks he's turning down mutants, but he is a mutant, and he aids mutants. Mutants are 80% of their clientele. And if she was more donated, like if they knew about this place, then donated, then he'd be more up for it. This is actually something very clever, because it does note the more isolationist tendencies that the X-Men have. They're always distrustful of other people. So when it comes to the drugs, like I said, everyone had to pay. This guy probably couldn't pay. He couldn't pay directly for the legitimate ways through the government, who are buying the drugs and probably selling to the big pharma, who sells them to their hospitals. And so they can't actually pay directly, and they probably couldn't even get it out to the Hellfire Club or the Hellfire Trading Company at the time. So they couldn't even take it through the black market deals, and not to mention the fact that Emma Frost probably wouldn't have allowed the deal to go for pro bono either. Because the thing is, that would be a absolute net zero profit margin. They would literally be giving the drugs away for no other reason, for nothing, absolutely zero. They have done charity work before, but that was always for the cameras, and they always managed to get something and benefit out of it. That was something about Krakoa. A lot of their actions was more, at least, for benefiting Krakoa in one way or another. It was very rarely doing something because it was actually right. They always brought up like, they did things because it was right, but they always had to make the argument of how it would benefit Krakoa. The Krakoa was never really about sacrifice. No one really sacrificed anything. No one could sacrifice a piece of Krakoa. Like, they had to get rid of a piece of Krakoa to get something back, to give something. So it was clear that Doctor Daye couldn't get his hands on the drugs. So that's not lazy writing. That's Murewa knowing that the drugs were meant to be paid for, and this would be a place that wouldn't be able to pay for the drugs. And they probably couldn't even get a ship there, because this place has to say a secret. This is probably one of the biggest secrets in the superhero community. Because if people knew about this, you'd have all kinds of anti mutant, anti alien, anti anything groups going straight at it. Okay, so moving on to another argument I saw was, why didn't Dr. Day go to the Quiet Council? So that is a bit of a fairer argument, but there is a very good counter. It's This was seen in Sabretooth. Now, if you're like me, that was a shockingly good book. I remember I had no idea of Victor Laval's skills beforehand, and I started reading it, and I was absolutely blown away by the quality of the Sabretooth book. This is the only other one of the few books, and if not few, only. No, it is actually one of the few that actually did look at a failing of Krakoa and show them not being able to fix the problem, but show how it can come back and bite them. So this is actually a very good thing. One of the most one of the most intense lines that clearly stuck with pretty much everybody that read it was this: every mutant on Krakoa is equal, but some are more equal than others. This was easily one of the biggest issues on Krakoa. There was actually a sense of elitism. There was a cultural hierarchy. There were some mutants that were clearly more important than others. This was seen when Mole, a mutant that was known as a Morlock, he was very low down the social chain. He was trying to get the attention of members of the X-Men, including Storm, but he couldn't. They were all too busy. And there was no one else they could go to create a scenario, to actually help the scenario, to help Mole. He's been contacted by, I believe it was Third Eye, or Third Eye was using his powers. And they were trying to get in contact, and he's trying to get help about this particular problem. The Sabretooth is in the pit, and he's crawling his way back up. And no one was paying any attention. So the fact he couldn't get the attention of the Quiet Council isn't actually out of continuity, out of context, or anything. The Quiet Council's biggest issue is that they never actually listened to the people. They never took what they did in consideration. When it came to time to replacing the members of the Quiet Council, all considerations went only to known X-Men or known former X-Men villains, already prolific individuals. And from the looks of things, unless you knew an X-Men personally, there was absolutely no way you could rise up to a position of prominence of, like, say, the X-Men or the Quiet Council. So it's quite possible he tried getting in contact with the Quiet Council, but because nobody knows of Doctor Daye, he couldn't actually get into contact with them, no matter how hard he tried. So that was always a problem. So that's one of the more clever aspects of this scene. He was ignored by the Quiet Council, by the governments of Krakoa. So this would actually have happened. And then there was someone that said, why didn't he get in contact with X-Corp? So this I already went through before. Krakoa was not all about, but it did have a sense of self-benefit, especially from characters like Emma Frost, who was literally in charge of the money, and including the fact they even created their own form of Bitcoin. They were all about amassing profits. They were always about bringing in the cash. So, there was a scene in the book, The Legion of X, that was using the character known as Jax, the Black Knight's daughter, who was recently realizing she was a mutant. She had the ability to activate the X gene in other people, the latent X gene that didn't activate at puberty. And of course, this was causing not just a lot of problems for her, but for Krakoa, because it was being used as a weapon by Orcus. So she was trying to get in contact with X-Corp, with Angel specifically, and he was absolutely ignoring her because it was just another mutant. He was probably just thinking, oh my god, who is this person? Why doesn't she just go to Krakoa? Why doesn't he go talk to this person or this person or this person? And he didn't actually help her until she brought up, Jax brought up what her ability was, what it could do, and she stated, when I mentioned my power, I swear I saw the dollar signs in his eyes. He didn't care about her until she became profitable to him, that he could get something out of this. And like I said before, this hospital is run completely on the donations of the superheroes. And all these superheroes, the Fantastic Four, Moon Knight, the Avengers, they're not expecting anything back, except just to be the best hospital they can be to aid in the treatment of metahumans, including mutants, mutates, all other beings. So there is no way that an organization that was obsessed with profits would have wanted to aid in a hospital that would have gotten them not only zero profits, but also not even aided in their sense of PR, because this hospital had to stay a secret. So those are three big reasons why it's actually more clever writing. These guys never would have received help from Krakoa. Before Krakoa, it's easy that you can actually make the argument that Storm made, in fact, that they were always struggling. That there was always like they're always in a fight, they're always doing this and this and that, and they never really had time to sit down and give them a donation, or they had nothing to offer. I mean, I'm quite sure you could probably think of something. I mean, with any form of hindsight, they could have done with anything. But the main focus is actually on Krakoa here, because this was their most. At this point, this is when their lives were most steady, and when they were at the peak of their power, in any way, shape, or form. So they probably could have actually given something at this point in time. So he has the right to be upset that they never actually sent any form of donations, especially with him being a mutant. So those arguments are gone, and I feel like are very fair. So the rest of me, this is just me also kind of either speculating or just coming up with my own headcanons on this sense. So another thing I just want to say about it is that he knew about the resurrection protocol. He probably was also a little bit insulted by that. I mean, he's a doctor, he's taken the Hippocratic Oath, and he's probably had, during his time, he probably had mutants that came to him, he gave a diagnosis that didn't look good, but he probably had some treatment plans for, something that he could probably help them with, and they wouldn't die, but they probably went back to him saying, you know what, I actually think I'll just go die and be resurrected just fine. I've been meaning to do that, but anyway, because I kind of wanted to look a little younger, I want to get this taken care of, I want to get this taken care of. So he probably actually really didn't appreciate the resurrection protocols. And I really appreciate the fact that Doctor Daye is a mutant, because I really feel like too many times when a mutant would criticize Krakoa or look at Krakoa and not see the absolute paradise a lot of writers and a lot of the characters were pushing, they were treated like either like an absolute outcast or ignorant, arrogant, or in any forms of that type of scenario. They were trying to make them out to be absolutely wrong. And any argument they made against Krakoa, which actually might have had some relevance, was completely taken out of the board, taken off, and they were made to be treated like these guys are wrong and the X-Men should never listen to them. One of my biggest examples is the character from Charlie Jane Anders' New Mutants, and that was Morgan Red. Now we already had Escapade, Morgan's friend. She already kind of went. She went to Krakoa and saw the good parts of it. She retained the fact that it did have its negative sides, but then some other writers then she just started liking it. It was about a sense of community. I get that. So that part's fine. And Charlie also did end it saying like she still disagreed with Emma Frost and Destiny and like the higher ups, the ones that were actually causing the problems. I really liked that. Charlie Jane Anders in her New Mutants series was exceptional. It was a great read. My only biggest problem with it was Morgan Red and how he was treated. He made some pretty good arguments against Krakoa as a form of nationalism and against the resurrection protocols that could actually create a sense of hell on Krakoa. And the biggest argument against what he was saying was when Ron was bringing up the idea that the mutants have never had this kind of benefits before. They've never had this kind of paradise before. Which is actually very upsetting to me, because there are a lot of arguments you could probably make against him. But essentially, to cut it down, she was essentially saying that mutants have never had anything this good, so stop poking holes in it. But we needed characters like Morgan Red. We needed characters like Doctor Daye. The ones that were seeing these issues and are going to take the fight to Krakoa. This was a whole point in even Vita Ayala's New Mutants. The New Mutants were seeing the issues that was actually being created by the Quiet Council. They were more about actually the culture of Krakoa. They were more about watching the people of Krakoa, not just leading Krakoa. So that's why Dr. Daye is actually a very interesting character to me that I really feel like we should have had during the Krakoan era. And I really am glad it's also with Storm. Part of me does feel like he is being a bit harsh when it comes to Storm specifically. But at the same time, I'm actually glad it is Storm he's kind of going at. One of the reasons is because, well, for starters, Krakoa, she was one of Krakoa's biggest shooters. She adored Krakoa. She was kind of pushing this idea that Krakoa is this great place, to the point she alienated relationships she had with non-mutant characters. She was willing to fight the Fantastic Four over it. Although, look, I'm gonna do a whole another X and 4 video, and trust me, you guys will want to keep your headphones on low, very low volume, because I will be screaming about that comic. Never mind. Let's just continue. The other one was about the Marauders issue, where she stole Skybreaker. And that in itself, and she was arguing against Shuri about Krakoa. She was bringing up concerns, and Storm was shooting him down. So, when it came to, and especially when it also brings up the idea of Hox 1, House of X1, and it had Cyclops, like, snapping back at Susan. Now, people liked using that as, like, a power moment for Cyclops, but if you're looking at what Susan's really saying, she's showing concern for a friend who's allowing people like Sabretooth onto their home, in their island. And you have to admit, Sins of Sinister proved their point. So this is why this is the big reason why I'm glad it's actually at Storm. Not only did she alienate friendships, but she was one of the bigger parts of the idea of the book event that showed what would happen because of how Krakoa was so unrestrained, and someone took advantage of that. This is something that drove me nuts. So what's happening here in this scene, what Murewa is writing, I really feel like Ewing should have done. I really feel like what Daye is saying, honestly, should have come maybe from Storm's boyfriend at the time, Craig. It would have given, being the human, being the guy from NASA, being one of the first humans to actually walk on Mars, like regular human, not a superhero, dude at NASA, coming from a science point of view, I feel like he should have had something more closer to this perspective than the one he had. Or, like, just at least something in the middle. Like, he could actually... Ewing wrote him, like, he was a massive fan of the X-Men, he was praising it, all this, so he did not have a very nuanced view. And I really feel like that was actually a very missed opportunity, because him having that kind of viewpoint would have been a lot more interesting to his character. And also, personally, I think it would have made it probably be more attractive to Storm. She, she likes being worshipped, I get that, but she doesn't seem like the type that would just want a yes man for a boyfriend. So it's not like I'm saying Craig was a bad guy, or I don't like Craig. But I really feel like if he was a bit... I feel like Ewing, not Craig, Ewing, should have actually had something like this, specifically because of the years that Storm lived during the Sins of Sinister event. And the idea that Storm was one of the few who fought back against other superheroes so hard and alienated and risked so many of her relationships, that this moment, that in Sins of Sinister, that they realized they actually had solid ground, they had points, they had legs to stand on, I really feel like it should have actually shaken some of her faith in what they made. This is why I'm so glad it's actually at Storm, because this is something I really feel like should have happened during the Krakoan era again. She should have been able to see this, even with her time on Arakko. I mean, she's seeing the flaws that were created by the society that was created by Genesis there. How come she couldn't see all of it that was happening on Krakoa? How come she couldn't take on board what Susan and Shuri and all these other characters were saying, to see that maybe what she was helping to make could actually have problems? That's why I really like this scene. It's showing that Krakoa had problems. It was affecting other people. And they actually have their own arguments against it, and their arguments are valid. So many writers try to invalidate so many arguments that not only some readers but other writers had. That they were trying to create these scenarios that would have made Krakoa more problematic, and instead of actually facing them, instead of showing what this could have caused to people, how this looked to people, they would just try to instantly, with some superpower, try and remove it. I feel like that was a big failing on Krakoa's point, because they could have actually told some really intense stories. Some really good stories. amazing stories, because at one point the Krakoan era really just became just like a few books that people would read and all these other ones that were just kind of there. And I find that very unfortunate, because I really feel like the Krakoan era could have been 10 times what it actually was. And I find it very unfortunate that it ended the way it did. So, to wrap it up, I really, really like this scene, especially coming out of the Krakoan era. And it seems like we have like all these writers trying to bring up all these ways that Krakoa probably failed the people, or why it was a mistake or something, but they usually are using very shallow methods. They bring it up, Magneto saying you have new gods now. We bring up how Kitty was very violent, and I'm glad we're bringing that up. In fact, I'm really enjoying Exceptional X-Men. I'm looking forward to more. But Murewa is actually bringing up the bigger issues. He's bringing up how Krakoa really could have actually hurt the rest of the world. He's, well, not hurt the rest of the world, but like he could have actually caused its problems. And how they could have affected the world negatively, despite how so many of them, especially the X-Men, were saying, we're helping the world, we're giving them what it needs, we're protectors and all that. So they were viewing it too much like superheroes and not as people that have to live in the world. So that created a very bit of a disconnection from the world. And now Storm is starting to get that connection back. This is something I'm really liking about Murewa. He's not just making this another X book. We're going to get X-Men in issue 3, and yeah, sure. But Storm is going to be interacting with characters from all across the Marvel Universe. We've already had her talking with Iron Man. She's talking with Doctor Daye. She's in the Avengers. So this is actually going to be probably one of her better books. It's not just going to have her with X-Men characters. We're probably going to have her going over to meeting other characters. Like, we're going to have her chatting with other Avengers. Maybe she hangs out with Captain America. She hangs out, and by that I mean Steve Rogers. I mean, she's already hanging out with Sam Wilson. And God, that was so cool. I love it. We'd probably go hang out with Luke Cage, like members of the crew. I'm really hoping maybe she takes a vacation down to Australia and hang with Manifold, because I want Manifold in Australia. Let me tell you something, that's going to be a video, and I'm sure so many people are going to hate me for that one. But I feel validated in saying it. My biggest thing, I'm really hoping we see her with the Fantastic Four. I love her with the Fantastic Four. I want to see her develop more of a relationship with Sue Storm, because I feel like they're cool. Oh my god. I am begging Murewa. Seriously, ask Murewa. I am pestering him about it. Oh, poor Murewa. He has so much. So this is actually going to be a very good... read the first book, thought it was going to be cool, very excited for the next one. Read this book, read this scene. I am looking at Murewa and thinking, you're just a bloody god of writing now, aren't you? I am very excited about what's going to happen next in Storm. I really enjoyed the scene, and I think it is actually one of the most intelligent uses of the Krakoan era in its post-era. That it was its more negative aspect. It was one of the more intelligent aspects on its negativity. And it can actually be used in future books to show the lingering scars it could have left behind one way or another. So, thanks for listening, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you again for my next video, which will probably be something that's going to be more expansive. Let's see what we can think of then, between now and then. Alright folks, hope you have a bloody good day, and I'll see you later. Catch me up on either Twitter or Instagram if you want to see some of my lame-ass artwork, or you can even find me on Discord. Alright folks, chat with you later. Bye!